Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth session of You're Doing It Wrong. My name is Paul Bamson. Today's session will be on Dynamo, and I'm really excited about this session because we'll be going over a primer on Dynamo. And we want to basically learn more about this tool that will allow us to basically bring parametric design and node-based coding into Revit. So let's jump into the workshop. All right, so what is You're Doing It Wrong? You're Doing It Wrong is a tutorial series that is designed to help designers learn not only new workflows, but how to optimize their existing workflows in software, because technology moves very quickly and it's important to work smarter and not harder. So I believe that every designer should be versed in all tools available to him or her, so they are never bottlenecked by the lack of knowledge of any specific tool. So it's important to be in the know. So the session roadmap, these are the sessions that were done previously this year. So the first session was Photoshop, then Rhino and Grasshopper together. InDesign, the Illustrator video, I had issues with streaming, so I need to re-record that and re-upload that. So if you're looking for that, it's because I had recording issues, but that's coming soon. Revit was last month, and this month is Dynamo. I'm really excited for the next couple months, so stay tuned for updates on location and live streaming dates because they're subject to change going forward. Alright, so today's session will be on Dynamo, coding using Dynamo for Revit, rapid iteration and form generation, and making smarter models with BIM data. So it's really a program that's integrated with Revit. So the software in this session will be primarily Dynamo, but Dynamo is a plugin that's integrated into Revit. So you can't have Dynamo without Revit unless you're using Dynamo Studio, which is separate from Revit. But for today's session, we'll be using normal Dynamo that comes in with Revit. The file types in this session will be vectors, which are, if you go back to previous sessions, are mathematically based elements that are infinitely scalable and are either a direction and a magnitude or a connection between 2 points. Go back to previous sessions to learn more about vectors. So what does parametric mean? So parametric means a set of instructions or procedures that are integrated with modeling techniques that allow for the collection and relation of different elements. So what does that mean? So each element is connected to each other, and when one element changes, the others change as well in relation to that change that happened. So for example, if you've got a rectangle that's generated from a point and you move the point, the rectangle will also move. Or let's say you have a cube, right? The cube has 3 parameters of length, width, and height. If you change the length, it'll affect the width, it'll affect the height, etc. So parametric just means that everything is connected together and is relational. So when a change happens in one place, it reflects in another place. What is Dynamo? So Dynamo uses computational design, visual programming, and node-based programming to basically bring parametric thinking and scripting to Revit. So Revit itself is a pretty structured program, and it actually has parameters built into it already, but it's pretty dumb in terms of having it to be, each element having to be manually edited by the user, versus using something that will allow for the edit of multiple elements at the same time that are related together. So Dynamo brings that level of editing to Revit. So it's basically the Grasshopper for Revit. So Grasshopper is to Rhino as Dynamo is to Revit. So both Dynamo and Grasshopper require Rhino and Revit respectively to work. They're basically there to augment the abilities that Rhino and Revit have. So Dynamo and Revit, they actually talk to each other. The data that's in each program constantly updates and is reading each other. So changes you make in Dynamo will reflect in Revit, and changes you make in Revit will reflect in Dynamo, and that cycle will continue, which allows for a really productive workflow. So if you're similar to Rhino and Grasshopper, it's a very similar connection. So because Dynamo works in Revit, it's also a BIM program that can use and take advantage of BIM data in your models. So you can extract things like floor type, floor elements, wall elements, data that's embedded inside these objects in Dynamo to further augment your graphs. So it's very important to understand, let's take a step back and understand what scripting and coding is, because that's what you'll be doing with Dynamo. Even though it's node-based and it's visual, it still requires coding logic and thinking to work properly. So the fundamentals of all scripting, whether that's line-based or code-based or node-based, is you start with an input, right? Where's the data coming from? What are we working on? What's the object, right? What's the start? So there's always an input. The input gets plugged into or run through a command where a set of actions is being acted on the initial input. So you have an input, a what, you have a command, which is a how, and then you have an output, which is the result of the command being run on the input, right? So you have the what, you have the how, and then you have the result, and that's the basic chain of scripting. Now, what's really cool about scripting is the output of one script can become the input of another script, and it can continue forward and forward. So this is how you link your workflows together. Is you start with an input, it gets run through a command, it generates an output, and that output can then become the input for another command, which generates another output, etc., etc. So you can really link your scripts together in that way. All right, so let's talk about a simple example here before we jump into Dynamo. So I want to move a point from its original location up by 10. How do you do that? So when you're telling a computer to do something that you would do manually, you have to break it down into its respective steps. So you start with a point. So you're saying, hey, Dynamo, give me a point. All points are generated by 3 coordinates, an X, Y, and Z. And those coordinates generate a point. Then you need to say, so that's the what, right? That's the input. Then you need to tell the computer what to do to that point. So in that case, I want to move it. And Dynamo calls it translating. So there's a bunch of terminology that's different in Dynamo than Grasshopper. So if you're a Grasshopper user and you're trying to get into Dynamo, there's some translating that needs to happen, no pun intended. But in this case, translate is the move command for Dynamo. And you see several inputs for the command, right? Each one of those inputs needs to be put in or defined so the command can do its job. Now, sometimes inputs come with a default, and so the command will run without an input necessarily plugged into that respective part. But if you want to see change, you need to create a defined value. So we have our what, which is the point. We have our command, which is translate, aka move. It's asking for geometry, so what am I supposed to move? In which direction? And by how much, right? So I want to move it in the Z direction, which is up by 10 units. And the units are whatever Revit is in this case. So if you're working in Imperial, it's feet or inches. If you're working in metric, it's meters. But in this case, I've plugged in 10 into Z. So I'm moving it by 10 units in the Z direction. And then the resultant output is this geometry here. So now I have a point that's been moved by 10 units in the Z direction. Now, I will always need the original point to get the output point. So Revit or Dynamo doesn't actually move something, it makes a copy. So I still have the original point, and now I have a new point that is related to the original point. So if I delete the original point, the move point also gets deleted. So that's the thought process that you need to be working on. And because both of those points now exist, I can do things with both of those points. I can, for example, generate a line between them, or use those 2 points to anchor an adaptive component to them, etc. There's a bunch of different things you can do, but this really opens up your workflow that you're working with here. So let's talk about some fundamentals of Dynamo. So you have a workspace, and I'll show you all of these things when we get into it. But you have a workspace, and a workspace has 2 components. It has your graphed view, which is your actual script that you're building with nodes. And then you have the background view, which actually shows the 3D geometry that you're creating. Both of those views exist simultaneously in the workplace, so you'll see the graphed on top of the 3D geometry, which is different than Grasshopper, where Grasshopper you have the script window and it's separate from the Rhino preview, and those things never interact. In Dynamo, they're one and the same, and you toggle between them, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So, understanding the uses for Dynamo. Dynamo is used for obviously 3D modeling, node-based coding, parametric design, form generation, mass editing, adaptive component placement, and much, much more. If you can do it in Revit, you can augment that using Dynamo, which is super cool. Okay, and before we jump in, I wanted to talk about packages. So Grasshopper has a plethora of plugins that you can download and install to further augment what Grasshopper can do. Dynamo works the same way. It's called packages for Dynamo, and instead of going to a source like Food for Rhino, you actually go to dynamopackages.com, and that's where all the packages, aka plugins, are stored for Dynamo. And you can get there directly through Dynamo or go to the website and download it that way. Also, if you're a Grasshopper user and you're trying to understand how Dynamo works in terms of its terminology, there's a handy tool that someone created. Big props. The link is here. Just search Dynamo for Grasshopper users, and it's the first PDF that you see there. Click on it, and it tells you this Grasshopper component is the equivalent to this Dynamo component, and it can really help you merge or translate the different terminology between the 2 programs. I use it all the time, and will probably be using it in this session. Okay, so let's get into it. I've got Revit 2020 opened here, and what I'm going to do is launch Dynamo. If you've installed Dynamo, it will be housed in your Manage tab at the far right side. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Dynamo. Again, Dynamo is like Grasshopper in that it's a separate window, but the 2 windows, right, Dynamo and Revit, interact with each other, and you'll see the previews in both windows. So this is your open window. So you've got previous projects that you have here. You also have new, custom node, and open. In this case, we're going to start a new workspace. And you'll see here that the workspace is blank. If you want to rotate, you need to switch into the background view. The hotkey for that is Control B to switch between the graph view and the 3D view. Once you're in the graph view, you can right-click and hold to orbit and see your preview there. The origin point here in Dynamo is the same as the origin point in Revit. So let's talk about interface super fast. You've got your typical commands here at the top: file, edit, view, packages, settings, help. You have your save, copy open commands up here. You can take a screenshot of the background to preview as an image, or the graph workspace to preview as an image. And that'll download a PNG that you can use in your different programs. That's what I used to show you the move component a little bit earlier. And then you have all of your nodes are here. And just like in Grasshopper, these tabs expand to show you a lot more commands. There's a lot of them here, and I recommend just going through them just to see and understand what's here in the list. Now, what I always recommend you do is just use the search instead. That way, if you have an idea like Loft, for example, you can see all the commands that are related to Loft instantly right here. So this is the same thing as double-clicking inside Grasshopper and typing. If you are in the middle of a command and you'd rather not go all the way up here to search, you can also right-click in the workspace when you're in Graph View and do the same thing, Loft, and then you'll see all of your Loft commands here. Now this is very important. So in Grasshopper, you have the opportunity to lock the solver. That stops the Grasshopper script from running, so you can make changes quickly without it running each time you make a change. Now most people don't even know that option is available because it's kind of hidden. Dynamo is different. It has that command to stop the solver right there in the bottom right left-hand corner. So right now Dynamo is set to automatic, so any changes I make to the graph will automatically run and show in the window. This is fine if your script is simple and your changes take milliseconds to run, but if your script is really complex and you're making a lot of changes, I suggest changing this to manual. What that does is it stops the solver until you hit run. Then it will update based on the changes that you've made. So just be aware of which state that you're in so that you're not sitting there waiting for a long time each time you change a slider or something. Okay, so that's the general interface. Again, they're linked together, so unless you're using Dynamo Studio, you can't have Dynamo open without also having Revit open. But of course you want Revit open because you're working between them. Okay, so let's start here by generating a couple points and just starting to see how you can work with Dynamo. So I'm going to type in point, and I'm going to use point by coordinates. But if you look here, you can see a bunch of different commands. So point by Cartesian components, point by cylindrical coordinates, point by spherical coordinates, and a bunch of different ones. In this case, the first one's fine. You'll see that the point has been generated. And right now it's set to 0 for all values, right? So the inputs by default are 0. If I right click and type in number slider, it generates a number slider, and just like in Grasshopper, you can change the minimum, maximum, and step of each number slider. In this case, it's set to 0.1. I'm going to change that to 1, change the minimum to a negative 100, and keep the maximum at 100. So now my number slider goes from negative 100 to 100, and it steps by 1. So it goes 1, 2, 3, or negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, etc. So right now I'm going to set this to 0, and then I'm going to plug this into X. Now to connect nodes, it's a little different in Grasshopper. It's not just a simple drag and let go. You need to click and then click again for it to show up in the next component. And when I change the slider, you'll see that the point is now moving in both Dynamo and in Revit, which is super cool. So you can see the changes that you make take effect in real time. And that is because I'm in automatic mode. If I change this to manual and I move this number slider, you see nothing is happening until I hit run. And right now when I zoom in and out, I'm only zooming into the graph. The background remains the same. Again, you have to change the mode that you're in order to interact with that mode. So I'm going to zoom out here a bit in the 3D background mode, and then hit Control B to switch back to the graph mode. That's how it differs from Grasshopper in that way. So again, I move the slider, nothing is changing until I hit run, and then I see the update. Right now the script is pretty simple, so I'm going to change back to automatic so I can see the change happen quickly, which is the effect I want for now until the script gets more complex. So we'll set this back to 0 and collapse the number slider. I'm going to create some more points here. So I'm going to Control C, Control V, which is one way to copy, or you can select components, hold Control, and drag. There we go. And I'm going to create another one. Okay, so I'm going to create a point that is edited in the Y. If you want to disconnect a component, click on where it was going. So the command, click there and then click in space, and now it's disconnected. So let's change the Y to 25, let's say. So now I've got 2 points, the Y there, and you want your components to interact in a counterclockwise direction. So I'm actually going to edit the X here instead of the Y, and you'll see why that's important in a little bit. So now the X is moved by 25. In this case, it's feet because this Revit model is in imperial units. Then this one, I'm going to interact with 2 directions. So in both the X and the Y by 25. So my third point's been created. And then in this last point, let's disconnect that, plug that into there, and I'll set the Y to 25. So now I've got 4 points that have been created, and I can change the points on the fly. So I know it's kind of hard to see. Let me expand this here so you can see both. Right, so you can see the points moving. Okay guys, 1 sec, I'll be right back. Yeah, I didn't do a great job of advertising.
No, I think that.
But I also moved. Yeah, I don't know. We need to do a better job of like.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think collectively
where they should go to get the most up to date information.
Yeah.
So.
Because I went to the events and I saw that that it was gonna be here. Ashton was asking me. They had a meeting maybe Monday or Tuesday at our office, and I was like, I don't know where it's gonna be. I thought it was gonna be at SLM, so I said SLM. So I don't.
Did you go to SLM?
No.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
And someone might have,
Right.
We'll hear about it.
Well, I hope they like check the website. It's like, did I get this right? And then they'll see that it's actually here. Yeah. But we need to start putting contact information on the actual page, so they like have my number and can call me
just direct if they need to get in.
Wondering.
Because I didn't realize they had changed all this stuff up and went into like complete security lockdown.
Were you able to get into the building easy?
Well, the building you can get into, but the space, Gensler, the door is closed. There's like key access. The open spot, there's like a big wall that slides out now that's closed, so there's no way to get in.
You've got to find a location that's easy to get to.
In.
That's not behind so much security.
Yeah.
But there are very few places like that in downtown.
Yeah, I mean, you could always do Moody Nolan. It's a setup what you want it to be able to instruct. You can always do it there.
Right. Okay.
Maybe, where does Taft work? He's in, AIA. Well, I guess that's weird.
Oh, well, we need an INOMA event location at the AIA, please. Thank you.
And actually, usually they're really great about hosting things. They don't mind it at all.
Yeah.
They've hosted plenty of things that INOMA did, so that might be a good spot to go. Because if we're in there, if we're already up there, they'll just leave the door open and people can come in and go, you know, until we leave, and then we close it, kind of. So that's an option. AIA office is set up.
Do you know where it's located?
Yeah, it's Wacker and a corner. You know where Jan's office is, or who else is in there? That's Taft, and I can't remember what the name of the firm is. Is the Starbucks downstairs? Not helping? Okay, it's next to. McCormick and Schmidt. So there's a McCormick and Schmidt on the water, basically, or right in front of it. It's the building adjacent to that, going east, directly adjacent to that. And so I can get you the exact address because I don't know why I'm just using landmarks, but.
Do you have your laptop here?
I do not.
Or are you just watching?
I'm just watching.
Okay.
I usually use it's the end of the day. I'm trying to get something out tomorrow morning. My mind is not working. Names escape me. But you know, she's usually here.
Oh, Alex's computer?
And we help each other.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, it's 35 East Wacker.
Okay.
So, you know, it's a little bit further out from the center of downtown, but it's not too far to walk to or to get to.
All right, so watch the rest of the video to catch up, but I'm basically just going over the basics of Dynamo and how you can get from point A to point B using it. So
you're not going to start all the way back over?
Uh-huh.
No? Okay, fine.
Well, because of the live stream. I'm actually muted right now, but let's see.
Okay, I'll let you go for it.
I have 2 playbacks right now, but yeah. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so we've got our 4 points here, and each point is generated at a certain coordinate. Now what I'm going to do is actually create a rectangle that exists between all 4 points. So I'm going to go into search and type in rectangle. And you'll see a couple options here, by width and length, by width only, by height only. But in this case, we're going to use by corner points. And there are 4 points here. So we're going to use the one that shows you points 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll click on that. And I'm going to move this over here and plug in all of the points respectively. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we have a rectangle that's generated at each one of the generated from each one of the corners. And if I make a change to any one of them, it should, oh right, okay, 1 sec. Let's move this back to 25. It's very particular as to what the rectangle should be like, so that breaks the rectangle, which is really unfortunate. Another option you can use to generate a rectangle is to use, let's try the other one. So one key way that Dynamo differs from Grasshopper is that you can't plug in multiple components into a single input. So if you do want to collapse a list of things into one component, you need to create an actual list. So that's what I did here was I created a list. I plugged in all 4 of those components into its respective location, and that then collapses everything into one list, which I can then hopefully plug into here. There we go. And I will unpreview that so you can see this. And I'm curious if this rectangle, no. Okay, so both of these components require it to be a perfect rectangle with no angles. Let's see if we can create maybe a polygon. Yeah, there we go. Polygon by points. So let's plug in that same list into here. Or, oh, that extracts points from a polygon. I want to create. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna hide this guy as well. Delete that. And so now I have a polygon that is generated by the points and works no matter where the points are located, which is good, which is what we want. Okay, so that's just a couple ways to take advantage of these points, and this is just to generate or demonstrate very simply what parametric means. Do you have a question? Okay. All right, so let's say we wanted to take this one step further. We now have a new rectangle. These 2 have been hidden. We'll go with this one going forward. Let's say I wanted to create a rectangle, or a cube, sorry, or an extrusion from this shape. There are a few ways we can do this. One way would be to translate, aka move, this object in a direction. So our geometry is the polygon. And let's say I wanted to move it by number slider by 100. Plug that into the Z and to zoom out. So Control B to edit the background view, Control B to go back to the graph. So now I've got 2 rectangles. So if you remember, again, translating something makes a copy. So I still have the original rectangle, and now I have this new moved rectangle that I can then interact with. So I'm actually going to put those 2 back into a list, a new list. So I'm going to type in list create and create 2 items here and plug in the original polygon and the new polygon. And then I'm going to use a command called loft, which is called the same thing in both Grasshopper and Dynamo, thank God. I'm going to plug that list into cross sections, and boom. Now I have a new extrusion based on those 2 original rectangles. I'm going to hit Control B just to orbit this object. And let's actually go back to Revit to see what Revit's doing on its side. So you can see here that that rectangle is still being reflected in Revit because both projects or both objects are related to each other. Okay, let's go back to Dynamo. Hit Control B. All right. So, I'm curious here actually. I haven't looked this up just yet, but okay, so that's not a slide. Okay, so let's say we wanted to add thickness here to this. Just gonna give this a shot here. So that's our surface. And then we'll add a thickness of... Double clicking, by the way, in Dynamo creates what's called a code block, and that actually allows you to plug in literal lines of code, like in Python or C# and Grasshopper. We're not going to mess around with this today. There are tons of tutorials that you can look at to take advantage of those. In this case, oops, I did it again. Some habits are hard to break. Number slider. Plug that into thickness. And let's see what we get. Oh, nice. That's giving us a nice thickness there. Now the thickness is being offset in both directions. I'm curious if it allows us to pick and choose use default value. Breathe, show labels, lacing, shortest cross product. Thicken. So this thicken command actually allows you to choose the actual direction. So if I plug in that same surface, hide this one, and hide the original loft, and give it a thickness, and say both sides no. So it's actually asking for a toggle. So let's see, a Boolean toggle, which is a true or false. So I'm wondering what Dynamo calls it. Boolean. There we go. Boolean is just a simple command that says true or false. In this case, I'm setting it to false, and now it's only being thickened in one direction. If I made this number slider negative, so let's make it the minimum negative 100, it would offset in the other direction. I think. Yeah, there we go. Let's make the step 1. So no integers here, or no decimal places. And you can see that's being offset in the opposite direction. If I change the angle here so we can see better, there we go. So there's my thickness there. Alright, and so this is all parametrically edited. So if I were to go back to the original points and make a change, those changes would be reflected in the resultant shape of the object. Until you make something weird and it breaks it. Okay. I do. Alright. So let's explore something different here. I'm going to unpreview all of these. So select them all and then go over to hide all geometry preview. I'm going to create a new set of points here, or actually one point by coordinates. And I'm going to create a circle from that point. There are multiple different types of circle commands here. In this case, we're going to use by center point radius. So this is the center point, and the radius will be defined by a number slider.
So do you have to type out the entire name command, or are there shortcuts?
Great question by one of the audience members here. You don't have, so she asked if you have to type out the entire name. No, because once you start typing it out, it'll start showing a list. So if I type in enough letters, I can actually go, hit the down arrow a couple times and hit it. It's just force of habit that I type out the full thing, but you definitely don't have to. Okay, so let's make this radius, let's say 25 again. 25 is actually my favorite number, so I always go to that number. I'm going to copy this set of commands. Control C, Control V. I'm actually going to move the second number slider, oops, that I created, and actually move this up in the Z direction to create a second circle. And let's move this up by 25. Let's go back in this view so we can just see what's going on. If you use the middle mouse button, you can pan, and then right click allows you to orbit. Okay, Control B. I'm going to change the thickness here of the second circle. I'm then going to do the same thing again, so copy these. The Z location, we'll put this at 50. And then change the radius once again, so we'll make this, let's make it 15. We'll make this 75, tall, 10. Okay, and then we'll create one more. So copy, paste. We'll make this only 80 tall, and 5. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is collapse those into a single list. So list create. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, if you're familiar with Grasshopper or coding in general, you know that computers always start counting at 0. So 0 is the first number. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 items. It takes a little bit of time to get used to that kind of thinking, but just note that even though it says item 4, it's the 5th item in the list. So circle into 1, into 0, circle into 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to create a loft command. So right click, loft, by cross curves, plug that list into there. And now we have this fun, weird looking shape thing that we can, of course, modify. Okay, sorry. Let's move that back to where it was. I'm actually going to create one more circle. Control C, Control B. I'm going to move this one to 100. Actually, no. Let's move it. Let's move back to 80. And move this one to 85, and make it 2.5. And then go back in here, add another item, plug this into here, and now we have a new point. Okay. Actually, let's make this slightly wider. Okay. All right, now I'm actually going to tap into Lunchbox here. And The reason why I'm going to use Lunchbox is that it's a package that, if you're familiar with Grasshopper, allows you to create grids of multiple kinds. So regular rectangular grids, diamond grids, offset grids, staggered grids. Very powerful tool for geometry generation.
And so does that integrates with Revit? Does that come with DYNAMO, or is that an add-in?
It's an add-in. So the question that was asked was, does Lunchbox come baked? It does not. You have to install that package. So I want to show you how that process goes about here. So when you click on the top package tab, you click search for package. You're going to type in Lunchbox. And you'll see Lunchbox for DYNAMO as the first option here. That's what we want. Now, there are multiple versions of Lunchbox for DYNAMO available. The latest version actually doesn't get installed directly from the package center here because the coders for Lunchbox were having issues. But all the previous versions do download directly. So we're going to use the second latest version that came out in July and install that. So I already have this installed, so I don't have to continue. Actually, contains Python, scripts, and various. You want to continue? Yes. I already have it installed, so it's not going to let me do it again. But go ahead and do that for Lunchbox. I'm actually going to go install Python as well, because they seem to work together. So install, yes. Python scripts and binaries, yes. Okay, so both have been installed. All right, so I can close that. And now I've got all of Lunchbox's tool set available to me. So you can see Lunchbox down here. And in this case, we're going to, let's see, geometry, panel, diamond. And we're going to move panel diamond up here. We're going to plug surface into here. And then we need a UNV division. So I'm going to create two number sliders. I'll just copy this one since I've already made it. Plug this into U, plug this into V. And then we should be getting some quad panels previewed. Weird. So my preview is missing, and I'm not sure why. I should be seeing everything. Weird. Let me check something super fast. Let me quickly save this. Okay, what I'm going to do to remedy this or troubleshoot is I'm going to create a watch component. And a watch component is just like the panel component in Grasshopper, which should allow me to see whatever my component is generating. And right now it's null, so I must be having an issue where Dynamo isn't processing right or running, because I'm getting nothing out of my watch component. So let me save again and then close out and then reopen it. So worried about this. Oops. I was worried that I'd have to restart all of Revit to get this to work right, but I might have to since I'm not seeing anything. So let me do that super fast. In the meantime, if you have any questions about what I've shown so far, go to the You're Doing It Wrong Facebook page, leave a comment or a message, or leave a comment on any of the YouTube pages. Be sure to like, subscribe, etc. But I'm constantly looking for ways to continue helping the audience. So if you've got questions, let me know and I can see what I can do about answering them, etc. Okay, so let's go back to Manage, launch Dynamo. Great, it's still missing. Okay, So it looks like Lunchbox kind of bricked my Dynamo. Actually not open, let's open up a new one. The workspace. Paste. There it is. Okay, so it looks like that workspace is corrupted. Boo. Okay, because what I was gonna do is actually create a grid, and then show you how to apply, or that you can apply custom Revit made families to your Dynamo script. So let's see if we can do that super fast. So I'm gonna go back into Revit. It's been a while since we've seen Revit. I'm going to go into massing in site, and I'm going to create a custom mass. In place mass, or actually, should I? Actually, no. I'm going to create a new family. So new family. Imperial, I'm going to do this as a generic model adaptive. Hit open. Okay, so I'm going to create some parameters here. Let's see here. We're in the top level. Let's go into front.
Oh, if you go, oh, that's fine.
Yeah, let's go to left. Actually, I know what I need to do. It's been a sec. Okay, so let's go into left. Rectangle. Take this plane. Actually, cancel. How do I switch the plane again?
If you go back into where it says plane there to the left, more, oh yes, go to set plane. You go to set plane and then drop that down. You can pick by name or you can pick a line, and sometimes I do that from 3D.
Okay, that might help actually, so I can pick the right one. Oops. Yeah, there we go. So the front one is no, other one.
And then you can set it there. So weird.
Okay, now I can draw the rectangle.
Well, it looks like it gave you the front option that time.
Alright, that took way longer than it should have, but there it is. Okay, so let's draw a rectangle. And, oh, that's massive. We're going to zoom in and make this way smaller. So we're going to make this 10 by 5. Let's see how that works. Wait. Let's undo that. Is that censored? I don't think so. Nope. There we go. Alright. And then I'm going to create, actually I'm going to use the offset tool. Offset, please. Offset. And then make sure that's a copy. We'll make this 0.5 feet. And then we'll use the best tool in Revit by a mile and a half is the auto trim. Easily the best tool in Revit, in my opinion. Okay. Alright, let's see what this looks like in 3D. Okay, so let's create our parameters and then we'll create an extrusion. So we'll go back into front. And then we will create this guy and this guy. We'll name this side thickness. And we'll set this one as well to side thickness. And then we'll call this one sorry, I hit my mic. Okay. Top thickness. And we'll also set this one to top thickness, even though it's the bottom thickness. Okay, and now we're going to create our extrusion. Should I have set this as a sketch first? Or I can create...
to do an extrusion?
Yeah, like, so it becomes like a mullion, basically, with... I think I'm supposed to...
There's that, well, create form.
Okay, and then I guess I can use the inner rectangle as a void form. Nifty tool for selecting things in Revit. If you don't know already, if you hit tab, you can cycle through selections, which is really handy. So we're going to change this to, let's also have it be 0.5 feet, which is of course 6 inches. And then I'm going to go into the inner rectangle and create a void form. And we'll make this one 0.5 feet. Actually, we're going to make this 0.6 feet and move it to the center. Let's go to left, just to make sure that it's perfectly overlapping in both directions. I'm going to switch to wireframe, grab the move tool, look at the center.
And if you do TL, the thickness goes away.
I forgot about thickness. For those wondering, I'm in urban planning and design, and I almost never use Revit. It's been a bit. Okay.
Doesn't let you grab it. Yeah, it's weird.
All right, we're in.
Yep.
Cha-ching! Okay. What does that mean? Okay, let's go back to 3D. I'm going to go into 3D. Okay. So we've got our mullion, and we're going to set that thickness of the mullion as a parameter. So from there to that face will be, create a parameter. And the reason why I'm creating all these parameters is because DYNAMO can tap into each parameter that you create. So we'll call this mullion thickness. And I'm actually going to create a new parameter here and call that bottom thickness, just to have as much customizability as possible. So we've got top thickness, we've got side thickness, we've got mullion thickness overall, and we'll create our glazing and lock our glazing to the interior shape. That way, when any of the parameters change, the glazing changes as well. Super fast. And then we'll move forward. So I'm going to select these faces, or these shapes. Control. I'm going to create a new solid form. Wait, maybe I need to go back into, actually, let me modify. Let's create a new shape. Lock, and lock. And we'll make this a solid form. And we'll change the material of this solid form to glass. Hopefully my materials are in here. Yay. Some of them.
Looking for the default list.
Yeah, I don't see it in here. So I'm going to click on default and duplicate default. And just call, oh, there's glass. Oops, let's go back in. We're definitely going to use the render appearance because that blue is trash. Transparency obviously on because it's glass. Let's turn it up to 50. Okay, we'll hit apply and apply. And let's go back into 3D and make sure, let's make sure this is correct. So let's move this to the point, let's make this 3 inches actually.
I think you can type like negative there. Yeah. If you want to come back.
Change the witness.
No, didn't like it. There we go.
I'm probably doing this in the hardest possible way, so feel free to leave it in the comments if I am. Most definitely am, I know that. Oops. You can't make something a negative thickness either, too, on the other direction. Let me unlock it.
But you need it locked. That's doing something. Oh,
No, it is not. Undo. Okay.
Yeah, that back panel's locked in place.
Oh, okay. Let's unlock.
Just want to get 90.
I should probably create a plane in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this isn't in the center.
Yeah, you can draw it. In that front elevation.
In that case, I can then use the plane, the same plane.
Mm-hmm.
I should draw it in the center.
Oh, I don't think it's set to glass.
It's not set to glass, but it's also double the thickness than it should be. Why? Why must you give me so much pain? Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough for now. That's good enough for now. Alright, category. Glass.
It's now glass.
Alright, so we should be able to create point elements. So we're going to create 4 point elements, and these point elements will be used for the adaptive component portion of this model. So we're going to create the points there, 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 and there. Okay, I think that should do it. So let's test this out. So if I change the, okay, we're going to save this family as computer. And load it into the project. And it doesn't really matter where we place it as long as it's in the project. Let's go back to Dynamo. We're going to load that family into Dynamo that we just created. Family types. You'll see panel 01 is there. Hello. Think we can trust Lunchbox again? Let me save. I don't think we can either, but
You gotta try.
yeah. Will it brick another script? Let's make this small. So actually, let's make it 10 by 10. Haha! We've got divisions. 20 by 20. Points, points, points. Let's make these more.
Did you offset it too? I mean, from the structure or from the shape?
The what?
Is it offset from the shape or right on the edge of the shape?
It's on the edge of the shape.
Okay.
Now, the panels are rectangular, right? So the shape is spherical. So there's a little bit of offset there. And also, if we, let's see, this is just dividing the surface. I'm curious if we were to do, let's have a little bit of gap in between it, just for now. Let's do 15 by 20. Okay. Now what we're going to do, if I remember this correctly, the planes. One sec, everyone.
Are we phoning an expert?
I'm consulting an expert, yes.
Who's your expert?
If you go to Dynamo tutorials on YouTube, I'm roughly following and very roughly, mind you, his is much better. A guy on a YouTube channel called Bim Possible. And if you search, you know him? Yeah.
I mean, not know him, but you know.
Yeah. He created this awesome, like, component, adaptive component curtain wall. And he created that shape, so he used the circles, right, to create the tower.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But anyway, I want to remember what he did to connect the two together.
Yeah, I just needed him with something simple. Help me reduce the file size of my AutoCAD drawing that is slowing down everything and making everybody upset.
It's definitely possible, I think.
I converted it from a PDF and it blew it up to unmanageable.
All right, so we're going to then create an adaptive component. Oh, that's not the one. Adaptive.
That says adaptive component output.
You'll see. Ah, there it is. Okay. Not this one. These are the points. And then the family type into here. And we got an error. Let's have issues. Okay. We're going to set this to manual while I troubleshoot here. Maybe the issue is, wait a minute. Aha. Okay, and there's progress. There's my quad grid that I was meaning to create earlier. So let's expand this and hit Control B. And you can see the 4 points here of each of the panels. The 4 points I created in the family are supposed to modify that family and place it inside the points, so you get a facade based on that design. But it's not working. So let's see if we can troubleshoot this. But we're about to head out since it is 7:30. So if it doesn't work, I'm actually going to point you towards the video that I'm following to show you guys that kind of has the same process here, but it dives into more detail that can help you get to this point. But I hope that the session so far has helped you see the potential of Dynamo for Grasshopper. We didn't get much into like creating Revit walls and Revit floors and levels and things like that inside Dynamo and having those be modified by Dynamo, but that's all things that are possible. So I just kind of wanted to show you a little bit of what was possible, but give me just a second here to see if I can do some final troubleshooting. I'm going to load in some different families that I already have that were adaptive. Maybe I made mine incorrectly. So let's go, let's see here. Insert, load family, go to my special folder where I keep this stuff. Oops, downloads. Panel 4 points. Open.
That's fancy.
Oh, it's asking me to.
It might need to be placed on something. It looked like it was trying to respond to your other component.
It's like popping in and out.
I think it's there. If you hit escape, it might just accept it.
Oh, it's asking for the points.
Oh.
Which is good because those points are what we need. We don't really, it's been loaded in, we don't really need to place it. Let's go back to Dynamo and change the family type to that. Oh, there's a bunch of them in there. Let's do clear glazing, see if that does anything. And hit run. Oh, that's really sad. Boo. Okay. Well, I'll show you guys the link that I was actually going for, and then we'll draw this tutorial session to a close. But if you go to YouTube and type in Dynamo tutorials, you'll see Dynamo Revit tutorial. It's 10 minutes. It goes through the exact same process that I showed, but I hope this allows you to see what's possible with Dynamo. Can you imagine doing all of this inside Revit manually? Of course you could if you went into the mass editor, but this is much faster and much easier to change because, again, it's parametric. So I can go in and change any one of these parameters and have that change reflected throughout the entire script. So let me set this back to automatic so you can see the change I just made get reflected.
This might be Lunchbox striking again.
Yeah, it might be Lunchbox doing its weird thing. Let me close that. Run started, so it has to think. Okay, but anyway, you guys get the point. Yeah, so okay, so that's Dynamo. A very short primer, and I said short intentionally because there's a lot more that you can take away from this and learn to really take advantage of its potential to augment your workflows in Revit and add in some of the grasshopper parametric power to your workflow. So thank you for coming to the session. Thank you for watching if you're watching later on YouTube. Next session will be next month on Lumion and Enscape, which I'm really looking forward to because both of those programs are really revolutionizing rendering, especially in the professional world where your time frame is not as long as it used to be when you were in school and you need to crank out a lot of very powerful imagery very quickly, and sometimes either doing it yourself manually in Photoshop and V-Ray or outsourcing it takes too long. So you need to generate something that looks really good in 30 minutes so you can meet your meeting with your design director. Lumion and Enscape will help you do that. So I'll see you next month. Really looking forward to those sessions. And again, the entire backlog, besides Illustrator, of the sessions this year are available on the YouTube channel. So check those out. Illustrator's coming soon. I know I keep saying I'll do it, I'll do it. But anyway, thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Woo.
Okay.
Sorry, my soundbite got in there and didn't.
You're totally fine. Okay. Questions?